So here we go. It is the off season.
Here we go. What's it gonna? Oh,
okay, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do this.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Brad.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Does he
Bobby
deserve scrutiny? Is there anything? It's gonna happen, and
you don't have to tiptoe around it, John.
It's gonna be an annoying debate where some people are baselessly going to blame Brad for the loss, and other people will say Brad is an infallible person, and you guys are stupid, and you don't understand basketball, and of course he can't go. Okay, that's how these arguments go. Smart basketball people tell the hot take people that they're idiots, but the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Which is, sure, yeah, Brad deserves probably some scrutiny. Doesn't mean he's going to go anywhere this season. Doesn't mean they don't have faith in him. But what are we looking for here to maximize the potential of this team that we believe had enough talent to reach the finals this year? And if they don't take another leap next year with this core, at what point do you start to say, well, what's going on, Brad?
I think that's it right there, right? I think one more year should do it, right?
But again, it's not a hot seat year. It's just a...
Right. Oh, I think you have to take a lot of...
Right. How many times do you get close, you know?
Yeah, and I think, again, what we talked about before, the Bucks weren't there. They didn't face Giannis. They beat the Raptors. I think there's some to that. I mean, we questioned him about his substitutions and when he benched that crucial Game 4 loss, when he benched those guys, or was it Game 3, whichever game it was. Yeah, he made some questionable decisions. And between that and what happened after Game 2 and the fighting, I think some people will even point to that, but I don't think that that necessarily falls on Brad. I think what it comes down to, or at least what I was questioning him is his lack of confidence in the second unit, and I think that really sort of hurt the Celtics because he was not quite sure what to do with rotations, and when he was up against it, when the Celtics were finally down 3-1, it's like, oh yeah, Robert, Grant, now I really need you guys, or Inez, okay, here you go now. Like I just think he was sort of timid and second guessing a lot of those decisions, and a lot of that had to do with the pressure from going up against someone like Eric Spoelstra. I just think that he was in the chess match in 2 of these series, against the Raptors and against the Miami Heat. So yeah, I give a little bit to Brad, but not a whole lot. I do. He has to get some though.
So my thing with Brad is that, and I'm not questioning his coaching at all. I think he's actually done pretty well with the fact that, 7 or 8 years he's now coached the Celtics, which is crazy to think about. But he's had so many different teams in that span where you can make the case that he's kind of coached like 4 different teams. I mean, the first year, obviously he was, tasked with taking on a roster of, misfits essentially. Then you have the Isaiah Thomas years. Then you have the Kyrie Irving years. And now you have this sort of team where you're expecting that this core group is sort of going to be around for a few years, right? So I'm really interested to see how next year goes, because there's not going to, you assume there's not going to be that turnover that we've seen in previous off seasons. This is sort of the group. So does Brad have to take on some of the fault here? Of course. I mean, he's part of the team and he is the coach. And I do think Spoelstra probably outcoached him a little bit, but I'm also not going to say, oh, he's not the guy for this job, because he did take this team. They beat expectations, and we have every reason to believe that they'll be able to be there again. And so for that reason, I think he's doing a fine job, and I think he can work on some things. I think that I'd like to see a little bit more mad Brad, out there. I think sometimes he can be a little too nice, and I think players might think, and I'm just spitballing here, but I think players might think, well, I could probably take this shot and get away with it, and like I'm not really going to hear it. You know what I mean? Whereas maybe if Pop's on the sidelines, maybe you think twice about a couple of those chucking shots that you do.
Yeah. Even in Game 5, he was doing like his best Nick Nurse impression. Like, where was that? What happened in Game 6? He was screaming from the sidelines, really, doing all that.
No, he has some adaptability to him, and there's a lot of context against some of the criticisms, because we would have lost our mind if Brad and Semi were in the game because he was trying to send a message to Kemba or Tatum or any of the others. Like, it wouldn't have gone well the other way. He didn't have the leverage to test them.
He didn't.
And that's where it comes down to Ainge, too. And we don't pull Ainge into this conversation enough. But he built a team that was sort of split in the middle, as I mentioned. Yeah, he didn't give Brad the options to go to some alternatives in those different situations. And that goes back to the trade deadline and the draft. 2 huge missed opportunities for this team to consolidate. Now we go into this offseason saying a lot of their assets aren't as valuable. So Brad, I think he does. I think he makes the most of his situations all the time. Now, One criticism I have of Brad is the hierarchy we talk about. I think he leaves that to the team. Develop your own hierarchy on the court and work off each other. He doesn't want to insert himself in those situations because it can be a little more disruptive, he probably feels like. But they need that to some degree. We see the end of Game 6, how not having some level of hierarchy and roles and all those different things can undermine a team, because we know talent at the top end of this team wasn't an issue this year. And that's what it comes down to in the postseason.
But this is a thing, that hierarchy situation, that, again, it rolls back years. It's his philosophy. You look at the conference finals a couple of years ago, when Tatum was the only guy who was getting any buckets for the team, and in late in the stages of Game 7,
they got away from him. Yeah,
he didn't get a shot off in the last 5 minutes of the game or something. That's unacceptable, and so that's what we mean is, you're right. If you are adaptable, you'd have to learn from some of these situations that you're in. We're not going to call them mistakes because you have philosophies. It's hard to weigh the good versus the bad, which is how much does having faith in everyone maximize their potential and allow them to play freely throughout the course of the game, that even puts you in a position that you're within a basket or two of winning a game late in that game. It might do way more good than harm. But in those late game situations, you're right. If you don't have that semblance of order, it looks like nobody's coaching. That's the vibe.
It's a pickup game and you're watching, right?
And that's what people see. And they're like, that's where people react emotionally, which is, what's Brad doing? And that's kind of like where all that stuff just kind of vomits out of people. I agree. If you're going to point at people right now, Ainge, for the roster construction, put Brad in a position where he didn't have a lot of outs. He couldn't send messages. He couldn't run a lot of creative rotations. He couldn't do a lot of different things because he just had what he had. I think he got we talked all postseason long about surviving bench big minutes. Every time you went to his bench, you would hold your breath and be like, are we going to get through this?
Even Cantor, it was Cantor ultimately the best choice for backup center. They made the best of him, but he wasn't a reliable everyday kind of rotation piece there.
So fair or not, he's going to catch some.
I think he's low on the totem pole of blame.
I still think he's low. I'm just saying I think he's low on the blame totem pole, but I think as Joe Sway said, the expectations next year are, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But now what? Now let's get there.
I mean, you said
the number everyone's going to point to at the end of the day is 37 and 36, and that's the playoff record.
Come on, that's a little deceiving.
I'm just saying that's what people are going to point to.
It is deceiving because he made the playoffs with some bad teams, and it was almost a miracle that they even got there. So I don't really put much stock into that.
Besides, 3 out of 4 conference finals, that's an accomplishment because most of years they overachieved.
Right,
and that's 4 extra losses,
But you said, I think it was John said, next year's not like a hot seat year. And I wouldn't say it's a hot seat year, but it's like it's definitely warm in the sense where it's like there's a lot of people who are going to be seeing how this team does next year. And if they underperform,
it's like 2019 kind of.
A lot louder voices are going to be calling.
Because 2019 is a self-admitted failure by Brad to be able to coach that team. He couldn't do it. He didn't do it. He admitted
he was high on the totem pole.
He admitted to doing a bad job with that team, so he knew it. Okay,
but Kyrie's a coach killer, I think.
But then then that thing happens that Brad is good at, which is coaching a team with reduced expectations, and getting them to play together and let's rally around it. We don't have Kyrie here anymore, and let's get this together. And he did, and that's good. But now the expectations are going to be up again, So now you got to coach a team that now has a lot of superstars again. The knock on the Kyrie team was too many superstars, too many mouths to feed. Well, you're getting there now. We're talking about taking the ball out of his hands, putting it in Jalen's hands more, getting him to accept a reduced role, and also the $30 million guy, who's going to opt into his contract also needs to take a secondary role. You're asking a lot of people to sacrifice right now, and he's going to be in that same boat. I think this group is more equipped to do it than the one that Kyrie was on, but it's a lot of the same players. And now all of them, when they go up, they want more. They're going to want more. So Brad's going to have to manage that.
Well, last year
Yeah.
it was just Kyrie was the guy, and nobody else on the team wanted him to be the guy, but they didn't have they just there was such a disconnect there where they were just like, fine, you go do
Kyrie
it.
established the hierarchy.
Exactly, and I think that was one of Brad's faults is that he didn't step in time to sort of bridge that massive gap that was Kyrie and everybody else. I
Right.
think he kind of let the players hope that players could do it on their own, and they couldn't. And I don't think that happened this year. But when you do hear about the a little back and forth in the locker room, you start to wonder, well, maybe these guys were kind of sick of each other by the end here.
Yeah. All right. Well, these are interesting conversations we're going to keep having throughout the year. I think all of us are in agreement largely. Brad Stevens is very low on the totem pole on things that went wrong with what this team next year. But toughness is an issue. Closing games is an issue. A hierarchy is an issue.
No, toughness isn't an issue, remember?
Not according to Tatum. But all of these things are things that a coach needs to address with his team that Brad's going to have to figure out how for this team to not do those things next year, okay? I'm not saying he can wave a magic wand and make it happen instantly, but these are things that can't happen. You can't have a team. And again, you look at any sport, you have teams that fall apart late, blow leads. You look to the coach, okay? And so he's not the one jacking threes out there, but he's got to be the one stopping them from doing it. You can't have this team be that team again next year because it's a recipe for disaster and another exit and round of disappointment. So again, this segment presented by Car Shield, America's #1 auto protection agency. Jimmy, you want to read the number?
1-800-CAS-6000. Make sure you mention
All right, not
the
age.
code BEAT. Make sure you mention the code BEAT like the Heat put the beat down on the
They
C's.
put the beat down on us.
The beat on the C.
10% off.
Or go to carshield.com.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'll do the whole read.
Do that. And save 10%,
FCashShield.com. Use the code BEAT, kid. BEAT.
How are you going to
Save
forget to say
10%.
that qualm, kid? Come on.
You got to throw kid at the end of it. Use the code BEAT, kid. Save 10%.
Brad Stevens going to need a Cash
Brad
Shield on
Stevens.
Talk Radio.
All right. So that's it again for Bobby Manning, Jimmy Toscano, Josue Pavone. Thanks for watching.